What's up, dog?
What's good?
What's up, my man?
How you been?
Man, I can't complain, man. I feel like it'd be pretty shitty if I did. I can, ups and downs,
That's a whole lot of vibe.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you can always complain, or you can recognize that you don't need to complain. It kind of makes you addicted to complain. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. How you been?
Personally, I like to fucking complain.
Yeah, right.
So you're better than me.
How have you been?
Good, man. Doing things. I was telling you earlier, I got chatted. Kind of taking a step back away from corporate cannabis, and I mean, honestly, taking a little bit of inspiration from you, just doing my own thing, knowing my own value, which is really important in cannabis, especially right now. If you're like a better grower, I think like you got to really recognize what you're bringing to the table, and like I sold myself short, Yeah. So I think I'm gonna take the time, do some stuff that matters to me, and stop making other people rich.
So here, let me explain what's happened, because most people probably don't understand what you and I just nodded and said, yeah, we've seen it all 100 times. So what happens is most of these commercial grows bring in people like myself, like Fonzo here. They have us fix their grow. They have us get everything running. And then they take you, move you the fuck out, and bring in some $10 an hour kids who just are going to run your SOP. They don't pay you consulting fees. They don't pay you much of shit. They pretty much tell you, hey, you're the new guy. You're the it guy. You're going to be the #1 guy here. And that works for about 6 months to a year. And then they realize, we'll just take his SOPs and his IP and everything that he does, and we'll just move him the fuck out and hire some young kids to do the job for you.
100%.
So the one thing, man, that I think a lot of people picked up on how I did things when I was working commercial cannabis was that I always had my own pages. So I might be in your grow, taking pictures of your grow and upping your grow on the internet, but I'm doing that shit on my page. So that every follower that comes, everything that comes down, every look is mine. I'm taking these pictures. I'm the one that's getting you the props. I'm the one that's getting. So when I would go, I'd do the same thing. I'd work for a grow for 6-8 months. The one thing that I did the whole time was advertise myself, so that I always made sure I was the brand. Even if these other grows thought they were what we were advertising, it was never about that. It was about making sure that you got seen and that eyes were on you the whole time. So that no matter what happens, even at the end of the day, you're getting exposure, true exposure. Not just like, I'm going to show your shit on my Instagram, but real exposure, Yeah.
I mean, my face is in High Times now. I mean, like, I got my face in High Times, and, like, I didn't have the money to buy that, so, I mean, fuck it. Like, that was, like, a lifelong goal. Like I'm 41. I've wanted that shit since I was, like, 12. Like, the first time I opened up a High Times, I was like, man, I want to be that dude. I've been that dude, So, I mean, and I followed that same idea, man. Like, it was my stickers on the jars in the dispensaries. I did a lot of the sales. So, like, as much as I didn't want to do the sales, like, those customers are my customers, not the farm's customers. They still hit me up. They're like, so what's good? Where are you working? Blah, blah. And that's great advice. Anyone out there who is thinking about, like, this is the career path I want to take, like, protect yourself and promote yourself. Paper, man. Like, so those of us who come from the black market get fucked hella hard because, like, ultimately, like, we don't have contracts on the other side. Motherfuckers got guns. They got guns too. They're just paper guns. And, like, they use the paper guns to, like, rob your ass. And it's intellectual property, which is some shit that, like, cannot be bought. You know, like someone can't just go and be like, I want to come up with a new idea. No, you had to work for it. You had to figure stuff out, you know, and like that is your time. You know, you're putting time into this and you deserve what that reaps. You know, you sowed something. You plant a seed, you want that fruit, you know, and man, protect yourself. Paper. Like if they act like you're a dick for coming in and saying, I want a contract, fuck them. That's a Chad who's about to rape you, bro. Just walk out. You don't need that job. Like
here's the funny thing, dude. I signed so many non-compete, non-disclosure forms, and finally, like, I had to ask somebody who worked in law. I'm like, listen, man, like, my goal is eventually to run my own business. I don't want to sign these while I'm working on these companies, but then they don't want to give me a job unless I'm willing to sign it. And that was easy for me because, you know, if I just have to walk away from this petty job to go do my own thing eventually, I will. But like at the end of the day, the lawyer pretty much told me the money that it costs to make you to enforce those is so expensive, these companies aren't going to give a fuck. So it's like you said, if you're going into a position that's more than just a grower, like if you go in and you're just a hand and you're like, I need a contract, they're going to laugh at you. You know, if you're just an introductory position, most places are just going to laugh and be like, all right, dog, we got 100 other kids that'll work for $9.99 an hour that'll do the same thing. But if you're anybody that's doing anything consultation, management, anything more than just being a guy pulling leaves, yeah, you absolutely need to make sure you fucking get a contract, and you need to make sure that shit is run by a lawyer who can tell you whether you're getting fucked or not. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like years later, companies that I've worked for are still being run by people I trained. You know, like we had impact. You know, and I'm sure, you know, you got dudes in Colorado who are still using the stuff you taught them. You know, they're cloning the exact same way. They don't even know why they stroke it this way. They're like, dude, just hit the scalpel like this. So that's why I do it, you know? And it's crazy. Like, you know, they're making money off us so long after, you know, I don't know. I've been dwelling on it the last couple of weeks. I'm just like, man, like, what should I have done different? But I'm good with it. You know, I learned a lot of stuff. I didn't know how to grow commercial at the scale that I have now here in Oklahoma. I mean, I had harvest, man. It netted or it grossed $1.2 million. You know, like I don't know too many people who've harvested a single room that's over $1 million. You know, like I feel like that's an accomplishment. You know, that I couldn't have got. You know, just you know, 1 million basements. How many basements would it have taken me to?
Think about this. How many opportunities from the moment that plant is cloned until that harvest? How many opportunities are there for a catastrophic mistake? You know, I mean, that's the reality. It's just the fact that you get to that sort of dollar amount and you got that much sellable weed is a whole thing of its own that nobody, you know, us in the industry and people that have run big grows, medium-sized grows, have run grows their whole lives, we get real jaded about that fact. But there is something to be said for just getting a crop from the very beginning to the very end and growing dank weed or weed that's even growable and smokable. You know,
I mean, like, I've grown thousands of pounds without a dirty COA. Like, I mean, there's things like that like you get really jaded about because it's like, that's work. What are you going to do? Like, I'm going to fail a test. Like, but you know, like after years of it, you know, you kind of look at it and you're like, damn, like that's kind of cool, I guess, you know, like that's shit that like I would have never been able to say like before, you know, on the other side. Like, and man, I've probably grown, I don't know, a good 1.5 million worth of your strains, which is kind of
that's awesome.
Like,
that's awesome.
That's one of the things more flower than anybody.
That's one of the things that I appreciate so much about the people that I do know that are in commercial grows, because so many of them do that. And dude, I know that it's tough for you guys because a lot of times you're giving up seeds that, like, you might want to run yourself or down the road or something else. But that's the kind of leg up to a homie. Like, that means more than the world to me, because even just putting my seeds in commercial grows means that they're going to outlive most everybody that's there. Yeah. Because a lot of these places, once they're into metric and once they're in the system, then they're just going to get, spread no matter what. Yeah. And for somebody that, there's been certain states that have been really easy to get seeds into. And, Oklahoma doesn't seem to be one that's super tough. But then states like Colorado, it can still be done, but it's easier in a smaller grow than a bigger grow because there's a little more flexibility with paperwork. And nobody wants to admit that, but that's the truth, Like, I don't know. How, in your experience between Oklahoma and Colorado, what did you see as kind of major differences, things that kind of jumped out at you between legalization, maybe something that they still haven't figured out yet in Oklahoma, but, in Colorado seemed a little more polished?
Man, it's like not apples and oranges, but it's like Red Delicious and like the most exotic $7 apple.
Yeah, right. They're just that far behind.
But like, so I like Oklahoma because Oklahoma reminds me of, say, 2013, 2014 Colorado laws. There's stuff that needs to be fixed, but metric doesn't have a chokehold. We fought back here and like held off metric. We've fought off like legislation that would have like hurt the system.
So they don't use metric, or it's not necessary?
No, we do use metric now. They held metric off for like over a year. Like I had dusty metric tags when we finally put them on. They've been sitting under my clone table for like a year. It was really influenced by like one lawyer, and like that kind of like shows the impact that people can have in this state, so that's really cool. We have a different kind of chat here.
The cowboy
chads and oil chads, and there's some good ones, man. There's some ones that like get it, and like I'm totally cool with that being part of the corporate culture here and just in general. Like someone's got to do that, and it's not me, So like let someone look at the numbers and tell me what we need to hit, and like I'm all about it. If we're making money, let's make money. But there's people who just don't respect the plant for what it is, and like they approach it like any other business, not respecting like cannabis culture and like the plant, and like not recognizing that this is like horticulture, like agriculture. It's not like producing something in a factory. Like they don't understand that like if you don't buy me pesticides when I need them, like I'm gonna have bugs, and then
you're gonna have you're gonna have problems. Yeah.
And it's
that's that kind of OG shit that like you don't learn that in your first 5 years of growing. That comes from knowing that if you don't do the shit early on and you don't put in the effort early when it matters, then by the time you've got an infestation or a complete outbreak of PM, there's nothing you can fucking do. Yeah. Your best treatment at that point is not going to deal with the problem, By the time you've let it get that far, in a grow that size, there's no small problems.
No.
Every problem is a big problem by the time it's a problem,
100%. And it's they're going to be there. Yeah. Bugs are ubiquitous. Just pathogens in general. Like PM is everywhere. You could be eating like grapes or something and have it all over your hands. It's perfectly safe.
Absolutely.
It's perfectly safe to eat like Eagle 20. It's something that's sprayed all over vegetables because they're all covered in PM. So like. You got someone who's eating some organic vegetables at lunch that they didn't clean, you got PM all over your stuff. I love me some hippies, man, but like there's problems that you see and you like recognize only because you've dealt with it.
Yep.
You know, one of them is like the things that like PM, man, like snowboard kids, you know, that like sitting under trees, man, fucking Aspens breed PM. It's like a symbiotic relationship, you know, and how do you learn that? You get PM when you're
Well, the other thing is, especially,
jacket, you know,
yeah, especially in places where everybody has a grow and everybody's going into each other's grows pretty openly, like, you know, legal states. That was the thing in Colorado that I noticed right the fuck away, was that, you know, not only does everybody grow themselves at home, but everybody works in a dirty ass fucking grow. So it's like and they all usually bring cuts from the grow to the house grow. So like the chances of them having problems is unreal. And one of the things I would always hear people say is like, oh, I don't know about buying bagged soil from the hydro store. And I'm like, well, man, I've been doing that forever, and I don't run cuts, and I don't have problems.
Yeah.
But you guys all run other people's cuts, and you always have problems. So it's like it's not you're bringing them in from some random place. You bring them in with the dirty cuts you're bringing in from your nasty commercial grow that you work at that, you know, is disgusting. Let's be honest. I worked in more nasty ones than I worked in clean ones.
Like, and it's crazy because when you work in a clean one, you're so thankful, and you shouldn't be thankful. You know,
that should be the standard. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
You know, and but man, you are.
Yeah,
like it really is. Like ultimately, like I mean, like look at me. I'm covered in tattoos. I got like piercings in my face, holes in my ear. You know, like it's hard for me to get a job that pays me well in something else. You know, and I'm good at this. You know, so like I do this. You know, and I got kids now, and I mean, like I can't live on a mountain in Oregon if shit goes wrong nowadays, you know. So like, I mean, you gotta change up your fucking game plan sometimes.
See, here's what's fucked up is that like people like you and I that have done this our entire lives, who can, you know, run a 5-plant grow, who can run a 50,000 plant grow. These are the people in this industry that should be coveted, that should be treated well, that should be, you know, those are where the opportunities should go. More than likely and more often than not, in my experience in the cannabis industry, it was more about who can brown nose the hardest, who can literally pretend the fake it till you make it. Yeah. Like that was so many of these kids who might have managed a McDonald's or they might have managed their local Arby's, who now come in and say, I have management experience. And it's like, no. This is not the same as running your local Family Dollar. Running even a small commercial grow is an entirely different endeavor than running just about anything other than, you know, large commercial grow. Like if you've grown lettuce, then you can probably grow ganja. But if you've never grown anything in your life, trying to run a commercial grow is not something you're going to figure out on the job. It's just not. No. And so that's, to be honest, that's the person that tends to, more often than not, end up in the grow job, or whoever will do it for the least amount of money, whoever can brown nose the hardest, and whoever can pretend that they know what's going on as quickly as possible.
Well, I mean, they got our badass fucking SOPs, so.
And that's the other thing, man. And that's the, you know, I get it. There's a certain amount of that's capitalism and that's business.
Yeah.
And that's what we all have to remember, is that when you came up in this, you cared about the people that smoked your weed. You cared about what was sprayed on your weed because you knew the people that you were selling it to or that were going to end up with it.
Man, I was going to smoke it for the next couple of months. You know?
Exactly. And the difference is so much of this weed is produced in situations where nobody really fucking has to care about the customer, about the end user, really about anybody involved in the chain of command other than the people at the top making money. And that's the only preoccupation that you see in this is make sure the guys at the top make money. And if not, we got to change something. Every couple weeks, we got to change something. That's not how you grow dank weed.
So coming back to the differences between Colorado and Oklahoma, I think here there's a lot of opportunity for guys like us because like we can get some money. I got 2 years residence, you know. I find an investor, I can start a company in my name here. Can't do that in Colorado. You know?
Right.
But the ability for people to easily get into this market with just a little money also opens the door for, like, so I worked at this grow shortly, and they told me that whatever I needed to get, that we'd get it, you know, like just tell them what to buy and blah, 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 you know. I'm like, all right, I'll come in. And they offered me ownership percentages, and they were like, look, we can't pay you for the first couple months, you know, just you come in and like set our guys straight, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, they were like good friends with the owner of another company I was working for, and like he was just like, you know, I'll give you time from the shop to go down there. And I was like, fuck, man, it's ownership. It's a potential spot for me to grow more plants, you know, run bigger, you know, some shit, find more cool shit. I mean, they had outdoor space, and I wasn't growing outdoor at this other place. And I mean, I just like to grow weed, you know, it's more space.
Yeah.
So they had this fucking run, man, and it was covered in spider mites, and I was like, we got to cut it down. And they're like, can we do anything with it? And I was like, I mean, technically, legally, you could like remediate this by like distilling it and turning it into carts, you know, but it's covered in mites, you know, like it's covered in like grossness, you know, like this is bad.
This is
Westing, and they proceeded to harvest it fresh frozen, and we're like, we're going to turn it into live resin, but they were going to do like CRC, and that was supposed to be remediation, which wasn't like, I'm pretty sure that's not a legal means of remediation for mite poop, you know. So it's
I don't know, man. That process pretty much strips everything. So I dare say that might actually be considered remediation in some places, but like, dog, we're getting in a conversation like that. We're talking about turning shit into just slightly better shit. Like, we're not talking about, you know, making it usable. That's garbage, bro. That's garbage. Yeah. And we all know that. That's the fucked up thing, is that between us, we know that. But in a cannabis business, that's, somebody's got to buy it. We had to grow it. We had to pay to grow it. So now somebody's got to fucking buy it.
Yeah, I pretty much quit right after that. Like, when I first got there, you know, like there was like mites, and like it was kind of bad in one area, and I had them cut down one room right down, and you know, like they fought the problem for another maybe like 4 weeks. So I probably had about like 4 weeks into that place. I mean, it wasn't a lot of driving. You know, I went more than I should have. I should have just left after they cut down that the first room, and just left them to deal with it, you know. But when they cut down the second room and we're like, this is how we're going to pay you, we need to turn this into CRC, and then we're going to use whatever's left to like buy these lights. And I'm like, dude, like, I don't even know that the math doesn't even make sense. Like, if this was good product, you know, it's like these people believe in like fairy tales, you know, like they think that like all they got to do is throw some seeds in the ground and they're going to get fucking rich. And Colorado, it was so expensive to get into the game that like it weeded those people out, you know. Right. So that was cool.
The
You know?
used car salesman of weed. It weeded out the
Yeah.
used car salesman caliber people,
Yeah.
right? Because if you didn't have the money, you have to at least be business serious enough to understand how to draw that much fund to be able, that much liquid cash to be able to, do anything. Here's what's fucked up though, Fonzo, and here's the truth that like really doesn't get said. You didn't have to tell me that story.
Yeah.
I could have started this by telling you that story. Because you and I have seen this happen so many times
Yeah.
that it's cliche amongst people like me and you.
Yeah.
Most of the people on the other side are people who go to their local dispensary, they buy some weed. Maybe at a certain point they learn that there's better weed than other weed. But for 90% of the population, that's where it ends. They don't really ever understand people spray pesticides that can be dangerous and toxic on your weed. People
Yeah.
have bugs, crows have bugs covering weed that you're smoking in that pre-roll. And
Yeah.
it's usually end up going into pre-rolls. It goes, if they can get away with it, or it goes into, like you said, hot dog water,
Yeah.
which is some sort of distillate for carts, or what's essentially CRC, which is cleaning it up with carbon filters and clay filters and assorted
So good.
chemistry and stripping everything out of it so that what's left is just hot dog water. It doesn't matter what strain it is. I mean, I'm sure they're going to put Purple Kush or White Widow on the fucking box so that you'll buy it. But the reality is that what went into that product
Yeah.
is garbage. And don't get me started on the shit they sell at the gas station. And that's a whole different form of we don't give a fuck, just please buy it, give us your money and go.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So one thing we got to talk about, dog, and I hate to, because these tend to get really off subject, but we got to talk about the batch, right?
Yes.
The batch. So that's how it, in my circle of people that we talk about that remember that period of time, there was, I'll set the stage, right? So I'm working for what will be an unnamed at this point extract lab. We make solventless hash, the very, very, very beginning of rosin.
Yeah.
So this had to have been early to mid 2015. And so I'm doing processing on the side. I'm doing wash batches here and there. And we had just started to do rosin. So it couldn't have been a month after we first made our first test presses in the lab. So I put a thing like, we're looking for people, not a ton of people jumped because rosin was brand new. And
Yeah.
so few people were like, I'll give you the whole room, you run the whole room, and you give me back rosin. So to be fair, like it was a big leap of faith because you and I met through Instagram or, you and I hadn't met at that point.
Was that no, yeah, no. I knew Sam. Sam
Yeah.
from Coyotes. It's the Black
Oh, I
Box
got
down
you. I got you.
in Denver. Yeah. He had I'd seen you put it up. We hadn't met, but I followed the extract lab and I followed all you guys, and because you guys were making the solventless I was smoking,
Yeah.
I knew Sam from Coyotes. It's like a Deadhead bar, it was a Deadhead bar, It's
Yeah.
like a dubstep bar now, And
Oh, really?
I brought
I
it
didn't know they
up to
converted.
him. I was like, "Yo, you guys want to run some of this?" Because he had smoked my herb, and he had smoked my my live resin at that point, And it was like all that stuff was new, And it was like I was fortunate, man. Like Denver was cool back then because like everyone who was doing the damn thing in cannabis was there. Even if they were from California, like that was like the spot. Everyone was like traveling to Denver because that was like the cool place to be in 2013 to like 2015, And I mean, like it was. There was a bunch of extractors who were winning a bunch of different awards on both sides of the fence, and like I grew good herb, and like I loved hash, So like I gave up a lot of product, and like I was fortunate enough to like find dudes with like cups that like made fire hash. So like that was like how people knew me at the point, and like that's how Sam knew me, like the guy with the Fire Live resin. So I was like, yeah, he would always be like, you should let me run some, you should let me run some. And then you guys started
I
making
honestly, I
that
honestly
rosin,
didn't
and you mixed
remember
it
that
up
was.
there.
I didn't remember that was how we came about it. That's
Yeah, yeah,
that's kind of cool to hear that because I do. It was the thing. We were reaching out a lot on our Instagrams and
yeah.
stuff, like reaching out, trying to find, like you said, man, there was a community in Denver around that time, 2015, even 2016. There was a community of growers and extractors,
Yeah.
people sharing, people talking about what they were doing. It was a huge time. And so it's super cool to hear that because I just thought it was somebody that, hit us up kind of randomly. I didn't know you knew Sam through, downtown and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, man. Like we would kick it and smoke in the back of Coyotes because it was one of like those smoke-friendly bars, And he was always like he wanted to run my shit into bubble, and like the returns just weren't there, Like I like had to pay my rent, And I when you
Had
guys
he run
started
for you
making
before?
rosin, I saw that when you posted that, And I was like, man, like I would like to have a whole bunch of rosin. That would be cool, because I don't know anyone else who has a bunch of rosin right now, because it was who the fuck had a bunch of rosin? You made that shit with hair straighteners back then,
Yep.
Like
Yep.
that was a big undertaking, like you guys washed it and then freaking washed it into fire and then like pressed it into fire because like I had you guys keep some of it in like bubble.
Yep.
And I remember I would go to Cervantes and kick it with all my like Cali weed grower homies that were like bubble heads and like be like, yo, you gotta try this, man. And that fucking Bubba's Girl, bro, that batch, like they loved it. It was so greasy and it bubbled
Oh,
back
no, no.
to the fire.
No, so
And,
no,
like,
no,
the
no, 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 no. We
rosin.
gotta stop. We gotta stop right there because that's where I gotta talk about this part of the story, right? So we get this batch of material, we wash it, right? At this point, nothing super strange had happened. Like it yielded well, material did well. We were stoked. But it didn't, nothing at this point jumped out as like, this is a super exceptional batch. Now, I vaguely remembered it being Bubba and cookies, but maybe it was a specific strain. But I thought it was kind of two different
Yeah,
strains. Um,
it was the Kind Loves cut of pre-98 Bubba. It was like this chocolate pheno.
yeah.
And I was doing a pheno run, pheno hunt of a bunch of Greenpoint seeds. They were all like forum cut crosses. So it was a bunch of forum cut crosses and that pre-98 Bubba.
So here's what happens, right? So like you said, this is still in the hair straightener days, right? The rosin to me at this point probably hadn't really been a thing, but maybe 6 or 8 months in the public. But like on a commercial level, nobody was doing it. Homie that started it, shout out to Solventless, Solventless Sal? No, Soil Grown. Yeah, he was number one, and then Cuban kind of took it and ran with it really heavy and did, kind of put it into. But as far as I knew, when we started pressing it heavily commercially in 2015, nobody else was doing so.
Yeah,
Because it was all hair straighteners, and it wasn't commercial. Like bags
Cuban
didn't
wasn't
even
doing it
exist.
commercial yet. He was still like
Yeah.
out like in Florida or where the fuck he came from, Like I don't think he had moved west to like do a commercial at that point.
So what would happen is they didn't even have rosin bags yet. What we would do is we would go to mean screens and get blasting screens, and we would wrap the material in that. So I think by the time we pressed your batch, we were getting actual bags, like rosin bags. But the problem with them back then was that if you had particularly greasy or oily material, we didn't know what to fucking do with it. Like, so we pressed your stuff. This point, we had just gotten a D-nail press, which was essentially like a little, compared to what they use now, there was, almost no pressure whatsoever. But it was like almost like a small T-shirt press type of deal, right? And we would actually have to use a clamp on it to get it to work. So we press your stuff. Me and Sam are in the lab at this point. It were hours. Every time we press it, it just turns to straight grease. So it just squirts out of every orifice of the bag. And we've probably pressed it 4 or 5 times at this point, and we're both like beating our head against the wall. We don't really know what to fucking do. We're like, we don't want to ruin this beautiful hash, but like we have a job to do. So we go, we smoke, we kind of think about it. We're like, we come back, and to my knowledge, now given this might not be true, it was the first time I ever saw somebody have to double bag. Now, once again, now kids have this whole folding technique with the parchment, and it's a whole thing, right? But back then, we were literally doing all this for the first time. Like, this was probably 100 grams maybe, or less. But it was the first time we had a decent amount to really go at that was this quality, that was legitimately greasy as fuck. So even when we got done, I got to be honest, to this day, the only rosin that I ever pressed that was that greasy was CBD material, because it's just notoriously like oily as fuck and just tends to like be hard to handle at all. But dude, that's one of those today that like I still think back on like those hallmark moments of 2015 and the development of rosin, and how rosin came into commercial consciousness, and just so for a lot of people that don't know, I worked at what I don't want to say is X Hash Lab through 2015, right? Just because it didn't end well, and I don't want to promote anybody I don't care about. So what ended up happening is we won Chalice 2015 with a fucking hair straightener. And, it was the earliest days of rosin. It was before there were commercial standards, and before there were, SOPs of how to turn pounds of rosin or of melt into rosin. Like, it just wasn't something that was happening back then, and the batch that we ran for you, in my mind, always stood out as one of the just oiliest, greasiest, dankest batches that I washed, even today, man.
That's what's up. That was so fire too. Like I haven't had a lot of runs turned into rosin since then. Partially because like I think maybe once, and it just wasn't the same. And I was like, I mean, like we gotta do that again.
To be honest, man, there's just so much has changed in the industry since then. And, like, kudos to everybody that's out there making rosin right now. There's some dudes out there just on my Instagram feed that just make my mouth water with these rosin shots. And, bro, it's changed so much just with the advent of air dryers and vac dryers. And, but the coolest thing to me, and it's something we've talked about before, is just being able to say, I watched this country from 2013 until today. I watched the hash culture in this country change.
Yeah.
I watched live resin become a thing. I watched rosin become a thing. Like, all of those things didn't exist in 2012 at all.
No. Yeah. So I got a homie watching right now. The homie Squid Ink Burrito, right? That's my boy Matt. We grew up together. He was a few years older than me and shit. Bad influence. Fucking sent me down the wrong path, but here I am. Thank you, bro. Like, I smoked hash the first time ever with that dude. We were like, I was like 13, 14, and it was like some Moroccan, and it was brown. And I remember, man, like that day I was like, man, it would be so cool if one day in America there was like shops where you could go in and buy different kinds of hash, like you see in High Times, and like that was, like 28 years ago, and like 28 years ago, it was like unthinkable, it was like to even see something like that, you had to go to Europe, you had to go to like Amsterdam, and bro, they're fucking everywhere now. Like here we are. We're such pricks that we're like, fuck this lesser hash. Like,
yeah, no,
it's great. Like, it's
absolutely
great. Like, life is cool, and we've had an impact on that. And like, that's so dope. Like, I've grown so much herb, and like, so many people have like gotten high off my shit, man. Like, it's so dope. Like, so I had this herb, man. Like, I worked for this botanist. Oh, I didn't work for her, but she was the manager, and I did like all her shit for her. And she was she just mislabeled a bunch of shit, and she forgot like what everything was in this tray of clones. And we didn't know what this strain was, and we had so much of it. And it was before, like, I mean, metric wasn't even a thing in Oklahoma. So I called it Carol Baskin's breath. You know, it was like 2020, like right when everyone was locked into the pandemic watching Tiger King. I called it Carol Baskin's breath, and we grew it for a few runs. And man, I trip out because like I've seen it all over the state, and I know I grew it.
That's the best.
You know, like
I made that shit up. Yeah.
like,
That's the best.
like to this day, I can't say for sure what it was. You know, but it's the Carol Baskin's breath, and I've had people talk to me about it, and like it got turned into so many different products because we were such a big grow, and I had so much of it. We sold it to a bunch of processors, and like it got turned into pre-rolls, into like hash, into CRC, into, you know, vape cartridges. You know, like it was everything, and it was super cool to see, bro. Like that kind of stuff is so dope. Like I kept my first. The first time, like, I was a big apothecary smoker because, you know, like, I just support the homie and shit. And, like, I didn't grow corporate herb like that in Colorado. So, like, I never had an opportunity to be like, yo, like, I got a jar of apothecary that has my name on it. You know? Right. Here I am in Oklahoma, and I had jars of apothecary with my name on it, you know? And I mean, like, that kind of stuff is, like, super cool, you know, and, like, to have had impact in, like, the evolution of a state, because I've been here since 2019. This is when it started in Oklahoma, you know, so it's like...
and it's still in its absolute infancy there. Like, they still haven't, they still don't have rec yet. So, like, it still hasn't blown the fuck up, and I still don't think their structure and their framework is ready for it.
No, not at all. But that's kind of what makes it cool, you know. We'll see what happens. Because it's open, you know. So like, as long as there's an openness for us to get in, it's still like our bastion of hope, you know. Because like, this is the only place I know where I can for sure have someone like come and get me a grow, you know, pretty easily. There's a moratorium on licenses now, but a lot of people are going out of business. You can get a grow for, you know, 30, 40,000.
Yeah, I was going to say, they did that in Denver at one point, and it was literally just because they had issued so many that weren't being used. People were just sitting on them, squatting on them. They were, you know, like you said, places that just were struggling and just had a license but just weren't doing hardly anything with it. Or early on, the only way you could get those was to get all of, like, if you wanted an edibles license, you had to get a concentrate license and an edibles license, and you had to have them all. And then later, they stacked a lot of that into smaller licenses. So you know, there was one for each, but you didn't necessarily have to have a concentrate license if you were going to make only edibles. You know, they changed a lot. Like 2016, 2017 in Denver, when they changed the law, essentially that you didn't have to produce all of your own weed, that changed the market like in a huge way, because then you could just come on with a grow and just grow, and you didn't necessarily have to, you know, produce all of your own weed. You could just buy nothing but wholesale and just, I mean, let's just call it what it is. Run a trap. Like, it's just a fucking trap at that point. Or they just call it a dispensary now. But it's a fucking trap. They run the trap. That's what it is.
Yeah. But, man, you gotta love it, though. Free enterprise. It's, I don't know, man. It's cool. I mean, okay. So, you got people who are like totally abusing the laws here, you know, and very much running traps. I mean, like, a lot of these dispensaries, just to stay alive, have to like take in people without cards, and it's
Oh, that's right. It's all
Like,
like medical. It's
yeah,
still
yeah,
all
yeah.
medical, right?
But
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. It's super shady.
the system disappointed everyone, so they stopped getting cards. So like patient numbers are way down, and it's kind of cool, man. Like, cause I like a little bit of anarchy, you know. Like I like to see a little bit of like outlaw vibe, you know. So it's like, look, this is Oklahoma. Yeah, fuck it. Like, I mean, I'm not like a law and order kind of guy, you know. So for me, it's kind of cool to see. Like it has like I said, that 2013, 2014 vibe, because that's what they were doing. I mean, like I go to Colorado, and they were traps.
Yep.
You know, like it was.
Yeah. Shit, that's what happened in California up until a year and a half ago. There was nothing but trap grows. They were of various sizes, but they were all trap grows. They were glorified trap grows.
They got illegal dispensaries. Those things are cool.
Yeah.
Like I went into
no, I'm just saying, like, call it what it is, though. You know?
I went into one, and like it was all like beautiful women behind the counter, and like bikers at the door with like shotguns and shit, like just sitting there. And I walk in, and I asked my cousin, I was like, what's up with this place? He's like, oh, it's an illegal one. They got one across the street too, and one down the block. And I was like, man, like, I mean, like that's kind of cool. I mean, I like,
bro, some of
the bad guy in like crime movies, you know, like I don't root for things, you know, so like I
hate to say it. Some of the best weed, some of the best hash at the time that I had. So when I first moved to Denver, I moved to Colorado Springs. This is 14. It wasn't legal there. So all they had was like shitty medical grows and the speakeasies, right? And so we would go to the Lazy Lion. Shout out to all those kids that I still talk to. You know, every one of those guys, super cool dudes. Mickey's still crazy as fuck out there somewhere. You know, some of those guys are just cool people that I still talk to today. But dude, back then, it was some of the best shatter you could get.
Yeah.
And once again, this is before live resin, so the only thing that was around was shatter. And they had terpy, dank fucking shatter in that motherfucker. I took my folks the first time they came out to Colorado, and my mom was just like blown the fuck away. And this is before I'd taken her to a dispensary, like to a proper dispensary where they got to see, like, you know, see how it is. Because once you see people just buying weed over the counter for the first time, it's especially from that generation where like it was always no. Like it was a serious, you don't get caught with weed type of thing. So to even see somebody else just buying weed over a counter is a pretty wild thing for that generation, you know?
I mean, it was for me, man. I mean, growing up, I got in trouble for weed. Like, man, I missed my grandfather's funeral because my roommate had a bowl of weed in Virginia, and they sent us both to jail. And like, it happened like the day after my grandpa died, like the morning after my grandpa died, and like I got sent to jail and missed the motherfucker's funeral and shit.
That's brutal,
man. But that's weed, man. That's where weed was. You know, that was when I was 18. You know, so 23 years ago, like that's a bowl, bro. Like a fucking tiny little bowl, like that much fucking weed right there. You know, like that's what weed was. And like I sell it like hellas, put it on my taxes. Like shit's different. Like shit's crazy. Like
that's the thing that so many people don't talk about. That's the thing we don't talk about openly in the weed industry is taxes and how much money the federal government makes off of legal weed.
Dude. Yeah. Yeah.
Because every place, that's the one thing, you might have a few more or less plants in your grow, or you might do some dodgy metric shit, but you make sure that fucking tax money is on point. You make sure them checks go on time. You make sure that tax man stays off your ass. And that's the one thing that in all my time in Colorado, in all of the billions and billions of dollars that the fucking state is making off of that money, off of weed, man, the federal government is cashing those weed checks.
Oh, yeah.
Left and right, bro.
Dude, the labor alone, man, just the amount of money that like we were paying, like every freaking quarter to the feds was just, I mean, for something that they don't recognize. You know, there's no federal protection. We can't put it in a bank, but
Yep.
you know, like they
They'll
want their
take that check.
you
They'll
know,
take that check.
man. And then they don't. What are they doing with it? At least in states, it's regulated to what the money can go to. You know, like IRS is just like, we're just gonna throw it in the pile. You know, and it's like
It
kind
goes
of messed up.
to the black. It goes to the black military budget. It just goes straight to the black military budget. It's like, we're just going to use this in clandestine military operations. It's just money nobody knows about. It's that weed money we've been taking since the 90s. Like, you know, it's just, that's the crazy part that most people don't realize, is that like commercial weed grows on the back end, for the most part, depending on how long your state's been legal, look like any other business.
Mm-hmm.
There's HR, paperwork, there's taxes got to get paid, there's numbers got to get accounted for. Like, it's very professional. There's payroll. Most of them have figured out some way to bank, whether it's Bank of America or one of these super sketchy motherfuckers that'll take your money, and it might be there, who knows? You know, and they all know we don't put millions in the bank. We just keep enough in it to keep the machine moving, you know? Yeah. And then what they do is, and this is what we never talked about, is that all of the extra money that can't be knocked off into the owner's pocket has to go towards the next grow or the next build out or the next lab, because they can't stash it. They can't store it. You can't get caught with $400,000 in your house. That's not a good look, no matter what you're doing. So it's like there's a certain amount of, there's an inflation, an artificial inflation that comes with the now legal weed market that is part of not being able to bank, not being able to keep your money in banks, you know. So they literally have to pump that money into grows when they can't sustain the grow that they're running. And that's what leads to all the shit we talked about early on, is that they just have to fill it and make it look good, because it's not about sustainability. It's literally about make it all look for the next custody that we're going to bring in here and do the dog and pony show for. They just need to make it look like it's a grow. They don't know what mildew looks like. They don't know what spider mites look like. Put those plants in the back. As long as when we walk the investors through, it looks like a good grow, none of the rest of it matters.
Yeah, and man, so the most recent chatting.
Just a heads up, we got 5 minutes.
All right, man. With the least amount of like risk and like legal fucking repercussion, it was essentially that, you know, like it was make this profitable, you know, make this look good, you know, let's get this on paper good for the investors. And like they were always like it's crazy how these cliches repeat themselves, because like everything you said, like it was always like, we're about to build a build out for the grow. We're going to expand it, a couple more rooms, and we're going to put this over here, and we're going to spread out to over here. And like, I don't have nukes, you know, like I got a grow gen bill that they're fucking emailing me about, you know, and like it was always that. You know, it was always make it look good for the investors who are going to buy this.
Because
and like
none of them are weed people, and they know that they're not weed people.
And the grow before that was the same thing. You know, like it wasn't, when we split ways, it had nothing to do with that. And like I knew that. You know, I was trying to be the guy who got the contract afterwards. That like, because someone runs that. You know, there's a contract like, this guy gets paid $100,000 a year, right, and like he stays with this grow for 1 year, and like for me, it's contract, you know, like that's what I need to make sure my family eats for the next year. So like, yeah, dude, like I'll help you get this ready for the investors, and like I parade people through and show them, and like for real, they don't know what mite bites look like, you know, like they can't tell what deficiencies are. They can't see plants and be like, this grows only churning now, maybe like a pound of light, you know. Like,
most of them are seeing weed in plant form for the first time.
Yeah. And they're just like, this is going to make me rich.
That's the dream. That's the dream. That's literally what you're selling. So here's the math behind it, right? And this is what, once again, the part that's never talked about is that in buying this unnecessary inflation, that's like you said, that's contracts. So we now have a contract with a contractor who's got to keep getting paid every month or he's going to stop working. So that's why most of them aren't making enough money to sustain what they have. But because they can't keep the cash in the bank, it has to go towards the next project. Yeah. And it doesn't really matter whether that project ever gets finished, as long as when the investors see it, it looks like there's shit going on here and it looks like it's getting bigger because they don't know. And they just hear, oh, we got another grow going. We got a lab coming online. We're going to make edibles next month. And none of those projects ever have to really, there is no 5 to 10 year plan in 90% of the weed grows.
No, because it's an 18-month plan to get the fuck out.
Get it sold
I worked at a grow where I had to take care of an orchard, like fucking stone fruits and blueberries.
Oh, wow.
I love plants, bro. Like, I come from a horticultural background. That's always been my thing, So, like, I grew plants as a kid, they're like, you got an orchard. And, like, at first I was like, cool, like, blueberries and shit, like, awesome. We had chickens there, and, like, I was always like, cool, free eggs. I was the fucking mad, bro. I didn't touch things. Like, I rolled around on a golf cart and told other people to touch things. So, like, for me, I saw free eggs and free blueberries. But, like, the reality of it was that. It's always like, make this look dope. Like, we were building a fucking, like, a jet ski fucking lake and shit. And, like, dude, like, these dudes banked. These dudes, like, came in with hardly any money, made it look great. It was not, and they banked. And, like, props to them. But, like, I mean, they were kind of dicks. They fucked me over, but, like, I mean, I can't. You got to respect the hustle.
As the sands of time, these are the days of our grow lives. So, man, I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for coming, man. When I thought about doing these, the first thing I wanted to do was bring on people that either I respected, that have shown me something in the biz, OGs, real recognized real. Man, you've always been a really awesome person to chat with, and I appreciate everything. Where could people find you other than at Wally_Blanco on Instagram?
I got another Instagram. I've been doing a powerlifting thing. If you want to see me lift heavy shit, Wally.Blanco. Other than that, man, like right now, that's the best spot. I'm not, like I said earlier, I wasn't working anywhere commercial. So, I'm just
hit the dude a follow. Hit the homie a follow. Go follow him on Instagram at Wally_Blanco. If you haven't already, www.terpfiend.com. Go get some seeds, all the genetics in the world you could possibly care about. We're about to do a huge Valentine's Day. If it's depending on when you're watching this, we're about to do a huge Valentine's Day mystery bag deal. These have been really cool. It's anywhere from 3 to 10 packs of seeds. It's essentially $100, so you get guaranteed $200 worth of seeds, or you can hit the lottery and get the 10-pack deal. Or we kind of mix them up. There's 5, 6, 7s. We hook them up. But it's been a big deal lately. So anyway, www.terp3nd.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at terpfiend, TERP_FI3ND.com. Man, I appreciate everybody. If you're watching this and anything here was interesting to you, tell a friend. Go tell somebody. Tell your mama. She smokes weed. Tell your uncle. We do these OG chats these are going to be now on Saturdays at 10 p.m. I do another show with the homie at the Real Mac Blunts on Wednesday. Want to give him a shout out. So we're doing 2 different shows here on Instagram. You can also catch them on my YouTube. All of the various links and what the fuck not are on my Instagram. So just go to my link tree. Man, I appreciate it, dog. Thank you so much. As always, it was a great chat, man, and we'll do it again. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Buy those dude seeds. Winners in every pack. Grown thousands of packs.
I appreciate it. Multiple keepers in every pack, guaranteed.
Definitely. You're going to have a hard time choosing. So,
man, I appreciate
it,
dog.
Pineapple meatball. Get the pineapple meatball crosses and the non-chocolate.